Okay, we're good. Welcome to Meet the Winners for Canada-wide Science Fair 2024. I'm Reni Barlow. I'm the Executive Director for Youth Science Canada, the organization that hosts and organizes the Canada-wide Science Fair every year. And Meet the Winners is an opportunity for everyone to meet the top 6 winners at the Canada-wide Science Fair. So first of all, let's give them a big hand, because So this week's Canada-wide Science Fair 2024 brought together 385 finalists with 342 projects from across Canada and 2 guest countries. After over 3,000 judging interviews by over 230 judges, last night's award ceremony concluded by announcing the grand award winners, the top junior, intermediate, and senior projects in both discovery and innovation for 2024. Joining us here on the panel are the Grand Award recipients. These 6 students have been honored as Canada's top young scientists, engineers, and innovators for 2024. We'll have the opportunity to speak with them about the path that brought them here, what inspires them, and of course the outstanding STEM work they have done. So we'll start first of all with some introductions, and I'll start with the Platinum Award for Discovery in Junior, and that is Sarah Bajkovic of Edmonton, Alberta. So Sarah, just give us a wave there. The Platinum Award for Discovery in Intermediate, Tanvir Mundra. Platinum Award for Innovation in Junior, Evan Buds. And the Platinum Award for Innovation Intermediate, Kathy Hahn. Best Project in Discovery is Anne Wong. And the Best Project in Innovation, Angela Tsaw. Okay, well, we're going to learn a little bit about the projects to start with. So I'll start with the Platinum Award in Discovery, and Sarah, who is actually from Edmonton, Alberta. And do you have some fans in the audience, Sarah? Oh, there we go. I knew there'd be a cheer. Okay, so Sarah, tell us a little bit about your project, which was titled Electroculture.
So electroculture is a farming method invented in the 1700s in France, and so it's essentially based on the idea that electricity can help plants to grow bigger and produce more fruit. So in my experiment, I proved that electroculture indeed does exist and works well with an increase in produce of up to 40%.
Okay, so we can grow better plants with electricity. Awesome. Okay, on to the Platinum Award for Discovery, and Tanvir Mundra is from Greater Vancouver, BC, which has a small cheering section, as you can tell. So Tanvir, tell us a little bit about your project, which was Reviving Resources, Harnessing Soap Nut Greywater for Sustainable Plant Growth.
Hi, my name is Tanvir. So essentially there's something called soap nuts, and what makes them so unique is they contain high concentrations of a biosurfactant called saponins, which is why soap nuts are used as a sustainable laundry detergent in a variety of Asian countries. So the purpose of my project was to see if soap nut greywater can be used for sustainable plant irrigation.
Great, so soap nut, so that's a plant, is that like a seed?
Yes, it's the shells of the Sapindus macrosi berry.
Perfect, okay, great, all right. The Platinum Award for Innovation, Evan Buds, your project was, and he's from Bay Area, Ontario, so I have a hunch there's a little cheer for that. Project was Virtual Lifeguard, a novel AI approach to drowning prevention. So Evan, tell us a little bit about your project.
So I created a device that can be used as a drowning prevention measure in residential pools. and it uses artificial intelligence to distinguish between swimming and drowning individuals. My hope with this device is that bystanders can be notified after the onset of drowning, so they can then remedy the situation and prevent fatalities.
Perfect. All right. So saving some lives. That's great. So on to the Platinum Award for Innovation, Kathy Hahn. And your project was designing biomimetic nanovesicles for cancer treatment. So tell us about that one.
Yep, so my project focuses on immunotherapy in cancer treatment. So if you know what chemotherapy is, where they're using intense drugs to kill the cancer cells, my project focuses on using the body's own immune system to fight against cancer. And what I did in this project was I basically designed these biomimetic nanovesicles that can accelerate T cell activation and prime T cells in a certain way that they can basically kill cancer cells.
Okay, so triggering the body to fight the disease through using these nanovesicles. All right. Okay, best project discovery, and this is Anne Wong from Greater Vancouver. And the project title, Eradicating Cystic Fibrosis Biofilms by a Novel, Non-Toxic, Multi-Pathway Salicylate Therapy. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so biofilms are bacterial aggregates, and cystic fibrosis is a life-limiting lung disorder. And when biofilms grow in the cystic fibrosis lungs, they can cause things like fatal respiratory disorder. So this project tested the effects of salicylates in combating cystic fibrosis biofilms.
Okay, so why salicylates? Where does salicylates come from?
Yeah, so salicylates are able to inhibit a number of pathways within the biofilm, including bacterial adhesion, quorum sensing, and cellular motility.
Okay, so, but salicylates are things like acetylsalicylic acid, they're derivatives of things like aspirin and things like that. So, where does that come from?
Yeah, so it comes from derivatives of things like willow bark and poplar trees as well.
Right. Great. Okay. Excellent. So, and then the final one, Best Project Award in Innovation from Angela Tsaw from Greater Vancouver. And the title of the project, AI-powered translation between sign and spoken languages.
Yeah, so like the name suggests, S2S, which is my project, is a novel framework for translating between American Sign Language and spoken English, and then from spoken English to American Sign Language. And this is done using a lot of machine learning and statistical techniques, including the development of a sign classifier and a segmentation model for continuous data.
Okay, so let's look a little bit at some of these projects maybe in a bit more detail. So Angela, the idea of trying to recognize American Sign Language and use some kind of device to translate that's not new. What makes your project new?
Yeah, of course. So the reason why mine is novel is not only because all the individual parts are more accurate than current research, but also it's able to incorporate more holistic features such as a focus on non-manual signs and also the difference in syntax that ASL has.
Okay, all right. So, so when you use the word, novel, or the idea that this is something new, it really is. And how practical do you think this is going to be?
Yeah, I think this could be really easily implemented into everyday mobile devices since we already carry them around with us.
Okay, yeah. Excellent. All right. So maybe pass the mic back to Anne. I just want to talk a little bit about this one, the cystic fibrosis. So what makes this a unique advancement in the work around cystic fibrosis treatment?
Yeah, so currently there are only a few drugs available to combat CF biofilms. One of them is aminoglycoside antibiotics, but it's known that within only 3 days of intravenous treatment, if you apply those antibiotic biofilms, you get acute kidney injury, which is very bad for patients, and after a few months, they require kidney transplants. So it's very imperative that we find treatments that don't rely on incredibly nephrotoxic drugs to help cure these patients.
Okay, so there's a possibility that extract of willow plants might actually be the answer for this, which is that's pretty awesome. Okay, so let's go back to Kathy, and specifically, you were looking at cancer treatments. Were there specific cancers that you were addressing with this?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, is whether or not my treatment or my nanovesicles actually target a specific type of cancer. Well, that could be a future advancement that I can do, but in my project, my nanovesicles don't target a specific type of cancer, but it rather just increase T cell activation so that T cells can focus on a specific type of pathogenic cells. So in other words, you can technically say that this might also work with other cells in disease and illnesses, but in this case, I'm focusing on cancer cells.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Okay, so Tanvir, what's the possibility that this this idea of harnessing soap nuts could turn into maybe a product or be commercialized or used in some kind of practical way?
So soap nuts, they come from the Sapindus mucorosi tree, and that tree is really, really abundant. And like I can tell like a little anecdote from my grandfather, who played a really big role in inspiring me in doing my project. And he told me like a lot of stories how in India there's just so many of these soap nut trees and no one really uses them because they're just so abundant. So definitely, if there's so much surplus of this organic resource, then we should be harnessing them.
Perfect. All right. Sarah, so electroculture, electrifying plants to make them grow better. What's the practical possibilities maybe for home gardeners all the way through to large-scale agriculture?
Yeah, so my experiment was designed on like a garden scale level. I didn't have very many plants, but it was still it was easy to incorporate into a yard. And I really wanted my project to be accessible to both the public and commercial users. So it could be expanded by, for example, putting my copper wire deeper in the ground, or expanding like the sustainable energy portion by investing in either solar or wind power.
Okay, so when you're electrifying the plants, how are you doing that? Are you talked about wires buried in the ground? So is it working on the roots? Tell us a little bit about that.
So essentially, it's the plants making contact with the electricity. That is how I applied the voltage. So it was a copper wire buried about 10 centimeters deep into the soil. And so because it wasn't insulated, the voltage could kind of radiate out into the soil so that the plants could make contact with it. I did observe that the plants were kind of wrapping around the wires, so there wasn't any like damage to the plants with touching the wires.
Okay, wow, it's really interesting. Okay, and Evan, tell us a little bit about how your device actually works. You talked about it using AI to prevent drowning, but give us a sense of what is this device, how does it work, and what would it look like in use?
Yeah, so one of the main features that I use, or one of the main devices, is a convolutional neural network, which is a form of AI designed to detect objects within images, audio, and video. And I trained a custom convolutional neural network to identify swimming and drowning, and I then implemented this onto a physical device with an alarm that users can be notified with.
Okay, so is this a device that you would like float around in your pool, or is it using image analysis from a camera? Give us a bit of background on that.
So users would mount my device on a wall or use a tripod, and it then uses a camera to observe the pool and recognize swimming and drowning.
Okay, right. So part of the challenge in doing that then is telling the difference between somebody who's just splashing around having fun and somebody who's actually drowning. And how do you do that?
So I trained on a wide range of images, and one of the classes I used was gameplay, which is like people playing ball and such. And throughout my testing, I saw that this was not identified as drowning, but drowning mainly occurs when someone's head is under the water, which doesn't actually occur so much throughout the gameplay class.
Right. Well, at least we hope not anyway.
Yeah.
It depends, I guess, on how rough the game is. But so Evan, give us a sense of where the inspiration came from for your project, because pool drownings are tragic events, and obviously we want to prevent those. But where did this come from for you?
Yeah, so I really started thinking about my project after I heard about 2 drowning incidents that occurred in my community. In both these cases, young children drowned in backyard pools, one of which while visiting a friend for a pool party. Following these incidents, I did some research online and found that 88% of children drown with at least one adult present. This really indicated to me how another level of protection to augment parental supervision could be really helpful in backyard pool scenarios.
Okay. Okay, so almost like maybe a babysitter for parents of
Exactly.
for kids in pools, and all right, that's great. Okay, so maybe Sarah, you can give us a sense of where the idea for your project came from. You mentioned that this is actually quite an old technology. So tell us a little bit about the inspiration.
So I love gardening, and I really wanted to incorporate sustainable technologies into my gardening. And so I did that through using a solar panel to produce my electricity used in the experiment. And then also for fertilizer alternatives, it's becoming a huge problem in our modern world with especially synthetic fertilizers, and organic plants are now becoming more popular. And so this is kind of a motivation to replace fertilizers and still keep the plants 100% organic.
So does this mean then that you can use electricity in the soil and not use fertilizers?
So in my experiment, I did not use any fertilizer or fertilized dirt. I also didn't add any compost to any of the gardens, and I still saw the same or better results as fertilizer or compost.
Okay, so this came from your passion for gardening. All right, excellent. Okay, Tanvir, what about you? What inspired you to do your project?
Yeah, so my grandfather, he comes from India, and instead of using commercial detergent to wash his dirty laundry, he would use soap nuts as a natural, sustainable alternative. And then the dirty water that comes out of his laundry machine, which is called gray water, the soap nut gray water would be then poured into the field. So when I had asked when that soap nut gray water had damaged his plants or not, he informed me he had never given it much thought. So really, it's like my past experiences, having conversations with my grandparents really inspired me to undergo my project. And also 50 to 80% of Canadian household water waste is gray water. So if we start using gray water for sustainable plant growth, that is a lot of water that we can reuse and essentially be conserving.
Okay, that's great. All right. Kathy, give us a sense of where your inspiration came from. Treating cancer. Is there a story behind this?
Yeah, so originally I wanted to do drug delivery by using exosomes. And then I remember reading this article on comparing chemotherapy and immunotherapy. That's kind of what got me to go into depth about more into immunotherapy than, let's say, chemotherapy. So that's kind of how my project kind of evolved. But yeah, my project basic idea is always to deliver something to treat cancer. And, I went from delivering exosomes to delivering nanovesicles.
So chemotherapy obviously is a really challenging process, and especially for younger patients and pediatric treatment and that sort of thing. Was there any kind of inspirational story behind yours, or you just have a passion for treating cancer?
Yeah, there is one actually, because originally when I first started studying biology, my passion lied in zoology, just like any other girls or younger kids, right? I love studying animals, and I wasn't really into the disease and illness section. It was only until I think it was last summer when I went back to China, my mom, the doctors found a tumor. So she had breast cancer, but it was not malignant, thank God. So that's kind of what got me into the cancer area, and I just kind of really read a lot of stuff about cancer, and cancer is a really complicated disease, and there's a reason that scientists haven't treated it for so many decades, millennials, right? Because cancer cells, they are extremely smart. They try to bypass whatever treatment that is developed, antibodies, antibiotic, etc. So I just thought it was very interesting to really look in depth about this global health issue. Yeah.
And harness the body's own defenses.
Yes, exactly.
To be able to do that.
You see all those videos on TikTok of people shaving their heads, and like the barbers shaving them too. But then when you think about it, right, that's not even the treatment. That's part of the treatment. It's not like you shave your head and the cancer cells are gone. So what I'm trying to say is that chemotherapy, it's extremely efficient when it comes to killing cancer cells, but yet it is unignorable of the damage that it brings to the body of the patient.
great. Thanks. Angela, so what brought you to sign language and trying to make a device that would help people with that?
Yeah, so last summer, I found out that one of my teachers is certified in teaching ASL to students, and after finding that out, I was kind of curious about American Sign Language as a multidimensional language. So I started researching it and realized that there's this large language barrier, especially between the deaf and hearing communities, and there's currently no great solution to it in terms of sign language translation.
Okay, all right. So inspired just by a skill from one of your teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's neat. Okay, and how about you? What was the inspiration for your project?
Yeah, so I think that biofilms are very under-recognized as like a factor in a lot of the illnesses that we have. So when we imagine the average bacterial infection, we usually imagine planktonic bacteria, so individual bacterial cells harming the body. But actually 60 to 80% of all chronic infections are caused by biofilms. So I felt like this was an area of research that needed more exploration that I was very interested in.
Okay, so you're like a biofilm fan or
Enthusiast.
promoter enthusiast. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a hunch there's not a lot of those around, biofilm fans. But was there any particular sort of thing that inspired you to look at this? Like, yeah, biofilms are not the most, maybe the most inspiring thing. You see them coating in the inside of the shower or a pipe or something like that. But what got you excited about biofilms?
Yeah, so the first kinds of biofilms I learned about were not cystic fibrosis biofilms, they were dental biofilms. So actually the vast majority of cavities are caused by biofilms, and as a child I had a lot of those. So I once had 21 cavities, which is a lot of cavities. But that inspired me to learn more about biofilms in the first place, which led me to things like infectious biofilms in respiratory systems, and that was where it got started.
Great. All right. So let's flip things over a little bit. Jeremy Hansen the other day talked about failures and the importance of failure in advancing anything, whether it's science, technology, just in your life. I want you to think a little bit about maybe some failures that happened along the way in the course of your project, and tell us a little bit about that and how you overcame that.
Yeah, so one of the major challenges that I overcame was getting into a lab in the very first place, because in order to do projects on biofilms where I wanted to test treatments, I needed to do it in a biosafety lab. But in order to do that, you need to get a spot first. So I spent like a long time sending like dozens and dozens of cold emails. I got like over 50 rejections, and it took a very, very long time, and it was honestly quite disheartening. But that just made me like reflect on how much I wanted to do this project, how interested I was in biofilms, and how much I wanted to test salicylates. And that was what kept me going until I got a spot in a lab and I was able to do my project.
So where were you finally able to get where were you successful? Where did you get into?
Yeah, I did my project at the University of British Columbia over the summer.
All right. Okay. Well, congratulations on the persistence. Okay. And how about you? Any failures, things that happened along the way?
Yeah, so I think my project is a lot about trial and error, especially because my project involves a lot of data cleaning and data processing. There were a lot of issues in terms of the lack of data, since it's such a niche area of research, and also the formatting of the data and also the testing of different machine learning models. And so altogether, it was a lot of trial and error.
Okay. Were there any moments where things went just really badly and you...
Yeah. At one point, one of my classifier accuracies was at 4%, which is really, really bad. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's worse than chance. So, yeah. And so how did you respond to that when you get a 4% accuracy rate?
Well, I think it's about being optimistic, because actually I think it's higher than chance, since there are 2,000 different possible signs. So it is technically better than if you guessed randomly, but I think it's just about continuing to try different methods. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. And how about you? Any failures, spectacular disasters along the way?
Yeah, so just like what's previously mentioned, one of the main failures, or one of the biggest obstacle I had to overcome, was finding a lab. Like, I personally, none of my, both my mom and dad, they're not in STEM whatsoever. So I had to personally reach out to professors at the University of Saskatchewan, and I think it took me like about a month or two to actually get contact with this lab in the oncology department and finally get started on my project. But yeah, and it's also about just trial and error daily in the lab, how, you know, some procedure that you carry out doesn't work out, so you have to redo it and everything. So yeah, and just this week is kind of also a big obstacle. My body wasn't doing well. First it was the plane tickets. It was really hard because I thought that I wouldn't even be here because there was something wrong with my plane tickets. So yeah, I mean, that's also kind of like a big takeaway for doing science fair, is to just never give up and just hoping for the best, you know, and then just thinking that things will work out.
So were there any secrets that eventually got you into the lab at the university?
Well, I'm actually not sure because when I sent in my email, I was just very straightforward. I told them what I wanted to do, and I read all their articles, or I read some of their articles on the things that the professors did, and I was just like, oh, I'm very interested in what you're doing in the lab, and this is my project. Yeah, it's very straightforward. It's just wishing for the best and just hoping that somebody will, you know, find interest. Yeah.
That and being very persistent. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Great. So, and how about you? Any failures, disasters, things that you can tell us about that happened along the way?
So one of the challenges was I wanted to do an antibacterial study to see if soap nuts had any antibacterial properties. Originally, I was going to use Petri films, and they're pretty special. So the E. coli bacteria is a pink color, and the rest of the soil bacteria is a blue color on the Petri films. But they were pretty expensive, so I decided to modify my experiment and do one in vitro, where I used just basic agar Petri dishes and used the Kirby-Bauer disk diffusion method to measure the zone of inhibition.
Okay, so your challenge was more around finding resources. And how about you? What about any challenges or things that went wrong that you had to overcome?
So one of my largest challenges was actually finding a way to apply the voltage consistently to the plants. And considering it's such an old technology, now electric components have evolved so much since 250 years ago. And so my original design looks nothing like what I have now. I had to consistently adapt through what I could find. And thankfully I was sponsored by two Edmontonian companies who helped me and gave me a lot of very valuable advice.
That's great. That's great. So you just had to adapt a 250-year-old technology to today's technology. That's great. Okay. And how about you? What sort of challenges did you have along the way?
I think one of my biggest challenges was the fact that I had to conduct all of my image capture and custom dataset creation at my grandparents' backyard pool, which wasn't heated. This meant I had to do it in the summer when it was nice and warm. But as I worked into training my models throughout the fall and winter, I wasn't able to add on any additional images that could have been helpful. Luckily, to overcome this, I used the large range of videos that I had captured over the summer. I was at the pool every single day, so I was able to get enough images to accurately train my model up to 98.5% accuracy.
Okay, so there's a possibility of how to do your STEM project and spend the whole summer at the pool. That's not bad. Yeah, good. All right. So maybe you can lead us into the next question, which is a little bit more about you folks. Tell us a little bit about what you do other than being at the pool when you're not doing your STEM project.
I think one of my real passions is reading, and I do a lot of it in my free time. But in terms of more sports, I'm really into mountain biking over the summer, and that's what I do for a lot of my free time, as well as skiing in the winter. And I'm also obviously into swimming, and that's how I spent all of last summer. And recently I've been getting into some lifeguarding courses to become a certified lifeguard myself.
Great. So, not only will your device save lives, you might too. So, excellent. All right. And how about you? What do you do when you're not gardening or doing your STEM project?
So I do love gardening. I do spend a lot of my time on that. but I also golf. I golf with my family a lot, so that's kind of one of my main activities. I also do some rock climbing and then like a lot of reading as well.
Okay, excellent.
I really like playing sports like basketball, for example, and volleyball, and I also really like reading.
Okay.
I'm personally a golfer myself, so in the summer I spend most of my time in the golf course. I read in my free time, and yeah, I also play the flute and piano, though my piano skills are not as good as it used to be because I'm focusing on science now. But yeah, I play the flute a lot, and I really like it. I'm also a band kid, so.
You're
yeah.
also
I'm a band kid.
a band kid,
yeah, I
okay.
play band.
All right, so.
Yeah, so in my free time, I think I like building like Lego kits and also puzzles. I think it's a very mindless task, but you still feel productive doing it and you get an end result, and I think it's a very like enjoyable, mindless hobby to have. Yeah.
Well, Evan built a Lego model of his pool and project. Maybe you should have a look and see if the two of you can get together and build something. Yeah.
Yeah, so I do a lot of debating, and talking about those kinds of issues has gotten me very into like things like social issues, which I'm very interested about. I'm also a digital farming enthusiast.
Sorry, a digital
farming enthusiast.
Okay.
I have some apple pies baking currently. Yes, my hobbies.
Okay, excellent. All right, so there might be students, maybe in the audience or watching online, who are thinking about doing a STEM project, and thinking, how do I get started on this? What would I do? How would I find an idea? I sort of care about wanting to make the world better, but I don't even know how to get started. What advice would you give them in terms of getting started on a project?
Yeah, of course. So one of my biggest pieces of advice, especially if you would like to do a project that involves like biology and disease and illness, is to cold email. Because a lot of these topics require you to get lab certification or to do your experiments in like a controlled environment, and that is often really, really difficult to find. So starting early, not being afraid to reach out, going on university websites and finding professors who are in fields that you're interested in can be really, really helpful for making your project a reality.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think some advice generally is that after so many years of science fair, I think it's really important to pursue an area of science that you're passionate about. It might be completely different from the traditional path that someone else would expect in science fair, but I think it's especially important that you're committing your like 6-month minimum to like an entire year-long research project on something that you're really interested in doing and committed.
So yeah, the idea of doing something that you're passionate about is key. Great. Okay, thanks.
I think, especially if you're trying to find a good topic, I think it's really beneficial for beginners to just read news articles, just read research papers in general, and once you have a general area that you are passionate about and you find interest in, just really reach out to the professors. Even though if they're not in the area, still reach out, because I think when I emailed a lot of professors, there were like 10 of them that gave me a list of professors that I can also possibly email that might help me in this project. So yeah, just really reach out, connect. You're gonna have a team, right? Because in order for someone to do a good project to succeed, there's always a team that's backing up, just like what's said yesterday by the astronaut, right? So really just to reach out, don't be scared, just reach out and you'll find someone.
Excellent.
I'd say that if you see a problem in your community, then you should definitely go for it and try to at least attempt to solve it, because every project is worth everything.
For me, it's like always believing in yourself, like have faith in your project, and then like always push forward, because it's like young scientists is very, like we're the next generation and we need to move forward with our projects. Like just never give up in what you're doing because it's so important.
terms of me, I agree with what's been said previously, and students should really find a topic that they're passionate about or a problem throughout the world that they really want to solve. And like the astronaut was saying, I think people need to understand that it's okay to encounter failure throughout a project, and you're going to need to push through it. There's a wide range of resources to help you, such as online, teachers, mentors, etc.
Okay, that's great. Evan, yesterday, or not yesterday, this morning, you told me that at the award ceremony that you had a hard time believing that you had just won a top award at the Canada-wide Science Fair. Tell us a little bit about that moment and what that meant for you, and maybe what it still means for you, and whether you've recovered yet.
Yeah, like throughout the whole award ceremony, I was really in a state of shock as I started to win medals and special awards and so on and so forth. And I think I'm going to continue to stay in this shock for quite a few days. But I would like to thank Youth Science Canada and Canada-wide Science Fair for providing this really good opportunity to young scientists to present all of their work.
Now, what does it mean to you to win the awards that you've won?
I think it really means to me how science can really be useful in our world today, and it shows how people can use scientists to solve real-world problems. And for me, I found my drowning problem in the world, and it showed to me how I can really create a device to solve this problem and save lives.
Excellent. Okay. And what was your reaction last night?
Just I totally agree with you, just shock. I never expected this would happen, and there were so many amazing projects. It's everyone deserves an award. It was really crazy this year.
And what does it mean to you to win?
It's it's so crazy how much difference people can make, and it's for me, I had no idea that my project could have this much impact, and I'm just really grateful to Youth Science Canada and the Canada-wide Science Fair for this amazing opportunity.
Oh. Yeah. So yeah, what was the moment like for you when you got called up on the stage?
So it was a pretty surreal experience because this is my first time doing Canada-wide Science Fair. But I've been doing normal science fairs for 3 years, but it was pretty wild. And
what does it mean to you? How might this change your life or you, or how you think about yourself or your project?
I feel like it shows how Canadian youth have so much potential because everyone persevered through their own ways, and it was a pretty cool experience.
Okay. Well, how about you?
I think nobody, when they win an award, they won't be excited. Everybody, that's a normal reaction, excitement and shock, right? And to me, winning a platinum is a type of recognition from all the judges, and that my project, I did a good job, and I wanted to achieve the things I achieved, and I did it, right? So. Last year, I remember I didn't get the award I wanted to, but just what the astronaut said yesterday, failure is not an option, right? You just pick yourself up and you just continue doing it. So really, this award, it's a check mark, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that this is where I'm going to stop.
Talk a little bit more about that idea of what happened last year when you didn't achieve what you hoped you would, and how did you handle that?
Well, I just personally went with it. A month passed and the feeling was gone. I just looked into other ideas, I looked into other science fair topics, and I just kept on doing science fair. I just kept on pursuing my dream. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, it really does resonate with what Jeremy Hansen said.
Yeah.
You just have to kind of set it aside and move on. Great. And how did you feel when you were on the stage?
Yeah, so this actually meant a lot to me because last year I didn't win anything at all, as I'm sure my delegation remembers, and I was quite upset at the end of the night. And so I was joking about having a little redemption arc this year, and I thought it would end just after special awards or something, but then it kept going, and I think by the end I was in a fever dream and really shocked. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you handle the situation last year? Because there are about half the finalists go home without an award from the Canada-wide Fair, but they go home with the experience. How did you handle it?
So I'm really thankful for the Greater Vancouver delegation. I think they've been my day one since I started Science Fair, and I think having met them really outweighs the lack of awards. And I also think that having pursued something I was really passionate about last year, it was an idea I had for a while, and to finally do it, I was very satisfied with what I personally accomplished. So that helped a lot. Yeah.
Good. Okay. And what was the moment like for you on the stage?
It was actually incredible because I started this year's iteration of my project during CWSF last year. So I feel like after this entire year experience, it felt like vindication. Yeah.
See, you started your project, this year's project, during last year's Canada-wide Fair.
Yes, exactly.
How did you do that?
Oh, I was setting up my project, Googling new project ideas. Yeah.
Okay, so there's another part of the answer is start 3 days ago. Okay, on next year's project. Excellent. Okay, if you were thinking about what if you could do anything, let's say that money and whatever was no object, resources were no object. If you could sort of achieve something over the next 20, 30 years or whatever, what would you hope to achieve, or how would you hope to kind of change the world, make the world a better place? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I really would like to look more into cystic fibrosis. So even beyond biofilms, that the genetic disorder in and of itself, I find it very interesting. I think the fact that currently there are very little treatments for people who do have cystic fibrosis is a really pressing issue. And if I can make the lives of people who do have CF better, I think that would be something incredibly meaningful.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, so in the next couple decades, I hope to keep pursuing machine learning and computer science in general. To be specific, I'm quite interested in natural language processing and also just the whole translation field of machine learning research. And I think it has a lot of potential to make communication a lot easier and practical in our daily lives.
For me, most likely, I'm going to continue pursuing in immunotherapy in cancer treatment, but at the same time, I want to find a balance between chemotherapy and immunotherapy. So if we were to actually, use chemotherapy in hospitals, we can collaborate it with immunotherapy to somewhat improve the quality of the life of the patient.
For me, I'd say raising more advocacy on soap nuts and also gray water, for example, because they're really valuable resources, but they're quite overlooked and underutilized.
And for me, it's kind of still developing my project and developing my prototype. It's there's still so much research to be done, and I'm just really excited to get started.
In terms of me, I have a bit more of a general approach, and I really want to continue to pursue my scientific passion, as well as looking at solving more problems within our everyday world and improving the quality of life of people that live in it.
Good. Okay. Just in general about STEM projects. Sometimes, we talk to teachers, we talk to students, and they say, well, they take a lot of time. They take time away from maybe, regular schoolwork or various other things. What have you learned in the course of doing your projects that you think makes doing a STEM project a really valuable thing to do?
In terms of the scientific side, I think it's really allowed me to learn more into the scientific process and how to conduct an inquiry or an innovation project. More on the personal side, I think it's allowed me to gain a lot of new skills like time management, which I find might be really important in later life as a person that's looking to get into university, which I hear is quite stressful.
Can be. Yeah. Great. Okay.
And for me, it's like finding support and kind of like letting people help you, because that was an issue that I had like with my project, is that like I wanted to do it all myself and I was like getting super burnt out. And so it's like just finding those supports around you, and it doesn't have to be your family or your teachers. Like as you guys said, like reaching out is like the most powerful thing you can do.
So, in terms of doing a project, why should a student consider doing a project?
It's like, I know it's a lot of work and like it takes time away from stuff, but it's like you get to learn so much, and not just about your project, but like you said, the scientific process, and meet so many new people. And also for future careers, like you can kind of test out things that you like or like might not like, and just learning more about yourself through the process is also really powerful.
Tanvir, what have you learned about yourself or about STEM, and why should a student consider doing a project?
I'd say for me the biggest one is time management, because you have to manage your school homework with your science fair project, but I think it's a really great learning opportunity in order to have a more balanced life.
In my journey of doing science fair, the biggest takeaway is coping with failure. Because as so many finalists mentioned, you're going to encounter failures throughout your project multiple times. So the biggest takeaway is just to keep on going, cope with it, and just do the best you can.
Yeah, so at my school, science fair actually isn't recommended during senior year because of how time-consuming it is, but I think science fair provides a really invaluable experience in terms of scientific communication, from designing your bifolds and other research posters to communicating and presenting your project to industry professionals. And that's something that you can't get from being in your room and reading papers, and the feedback that they provide you is really just overall valuable to have.
Yeah, I think science fair actually uniquely shows and teaches us to value the ability to help others, because like going into a lab, for example, and having that as a completely free experience, it requires a lot of generosity from the part of the people who are running the lab, and even from like getting advice from mentors, for example, asking for feedback from delegates, I think takes a lot of their time, and that's underappreciated as well. And I think that this teaches us to be grateful for the people that we have around us, the support networks that we have, and hopefully when we have like perhaps more opportunities to hand out to other people in the future, we'll look back on people who have helped us and let that encourage us to help other people as well.
Thank you. That's great. 4 of you are heading off to represent Canada at international competitions. 2 of you are going to go to Poland, and 2 of you are going to go to Taiwan. So what does that mean for you?
I'm really excited to be able to represent Canada on an international stage. I think this means a lot, and is like, I feel like a really nice like reflection of like value of science and like passion for science as well. And I'm really excited to go to Poland.
So on a broader scale, I'm really honored to be able to represent Canada. I think it's really exciting to for the idea of meeting new people across the world, and I think it represents how science is very global, and it's not limited to one country or within it. And yeah, I'm also excited to go to Poland.
On the international stage, I feel like I'm going to personally make a lot of connections with other young scientists across the world, and I'm really grateful and honored that my project was chosen to represent Canada at the Taiwan International Science Fair.
I'm really grateful and also honored to go to Taiwan, and I think it's really cool how science can bring people from different backgrounds together.
Okay. And Sarah and Evan, when you get back to school, what do you think the reaction's going to be about your success and your projects?
I'm honestly not sure. My friends might be a little bit annoyed that I got to miss a week of school. But I'm really excited to get back to school and kind of like back into routine and get some sleep.
I think my school is going to be quite happy with my accomplishment, as we haven't really had a Canada-wide science fair student in the past. And I think it shows how any student, no matter what school they're in, has a really good chance of completing a science fair project and going far places with it.
What a great message to end on. So thanks. I want to recognize all of our Platinum and Best Project Award winners and thank them for sharing their insights into their projects and the process, and also a bit of advice for students who are looking to undertake projects. So that brings us to the end of our Meet the Winners panel for Canada-wide Science Fair 2024. And we look forward to seeing the next round of winners at Canada-wide Science Fair 2025 in Fredericton, New Brunswick.
Thank you so much. You were such a good interview. Yeah, thank you.